million votes cast in this election. Jack Ciattarelli with 876,000. That's, of course, with several percentage points, several counties still not completing their reporting. But again, this race is projected. Mikey Sherrill projected to win this race. And believe me, her supporters didn't even think that it was going to be this wide. There were a lot of people here tonight saying that they thought this was race might not be called until tomorrow or the day after because it was so close. But tonight it looks like Mikey Sherrill has pulled off a win here in New Jersey that folks in this room say sends a resounding message to Washington and beyond, that they are not happy with the way things are going in this country, and they're looking to turn things around and not keep business as usual. Again, the chairman of the state Democratic Party has riled this crowd up as if they needed that. It was a deafening roar when those numbers popped up on the screen, just as you and David were reading them there in our studio back at 30 Rock. We were seeing those same numbers here, and it was really a tremendous roar from this crowd. It's going to be Mikey, Mikey, Mikey. It was a hard-fought race, as you know, a hard-fought campaign, a nasty campaign, and Mikey Sherrill never lost her track of her message. Her message was affordability, caring about people, property taxes, making it affordable for people to feed their families, and of course pay their electric bills. All of those things that became national issues in this race in the waning days of this campaign. And Mikey Sherrill never let go of that message, and tying it to her opponent and Donald Trump's, calling Jack Ciattarelli a puppet of the Trump administration, and hoping that New Jersey voters, that would resonate with voters who saw their electricity bills going up as they were paying more for bread and coffee and everything else. And she hammered home that message until this morning, till this very morning, after she cast her ballot, came out, talked to reporters, and said the same thing. She spent the last week or so crisscrossing the state in a bus, on a bus tour, as did Jack Ciattarelli, crisscrossing the bus and talking to voters, crisscrossing the state. And she said she was hearing the same thing from voters, whether they were North Jersey, South Jersey, Western New Jersey, or Central New Jersey. She was hearing that same message. And she says that this is a resounding no to Donald Trump. And that's what you're hearing on the stage behind me as the chairman of the state Democratic Party addresses the crowd in this room. They are jubilant tonight over what appears to be a victory for Mikey Sherrill.
Pat, extraordinary. And, you know, I wanted to ask you because it was a pretty nasty race at times, and a lot of, okay, Pat, I'm going to get back to you. I'm getting an update now because we have news to break on the New York City mayor's race.
It looks like we have a projected winner. If we can get the graphic on the screen, there it is. Zohran Mamdani, the projected winner of the New York City mayoral race with 50% of the vote. 42% going to Andrew Cuomo, 8% with Curtis Sliwa, with 60%, David, of the precincts reporting.
So an extraordinary turn of events, although polls suggested this would happen. But Zohran Mamdani, who was a state assemblyman, not very well known in New York.
Vistaprint prints everything to get your brand in front of your fans, like T-shirts, water bottles, and totes, so everyone can gift it.
Coming from behind and emerging to win the Democratic primary, and now is mayor. We're going to take a pause here and update our viewers who are watching the NBA game on Channel 4.
We are breaking in to let you know NBC News has projected Zohran Mamdani as the winner in the New York City mayor's race. Let's take a look at the results. These are just in, with 60% of the precincts reporting. Zohran Mamdani, 50% of the vote. The projected winner, Andrew Cuomo, with 42%. Curtis Sliwa coming in with 8%.
All right, let's take a look at New Jersey governor, which is
just in. Zohran Mamdani, the projected winner with 50% of the vote. Andrew Cuomo coming in with 42%. Curtis Sliwa with 8%. And David, that's with 60% of the
We're trying a lot tonight, but hanging in there with us as we kind of serve all platforms here in this media ecosphere.
Yeah, it's been a great night so far. So much energy. You're taking a look right now at the New Jersey governor projected winner, Mikey Sherrill, with 57% of the vote, 42% going to Jack Ciattarelli. That's with 63% of the precincts reporting.
So you have these races as we look at this. Mikey Sherrill now winning here in New Jersey. Abigail Spanberger won in Virginia, former congresswoman and CIA officer, first woman governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and now Zohran Mamdani winning. So, Natalie, this will now lead to the scrutiny and discussion about
the bigger
Democratic candidates, leadership, and issues to be tackled.
Of course, these are the big races that we're watching, but with national implications, many believe. This is a look at the projected winner for New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, 50% of the vote. This is with 60% of the precincts reporting. Andrew Cuomo coming in with 42%. Curtis Sliwa with 8% of the vote there. This information just in. We have reporters all across the area covering these races. We do want to get to Melissa Russo with this information just in. Melissa, I know you're hearing the cheers behind you from the Mamdani campaign. What's happening?
Well, there was a delayed reaction because the NBC prediction did not translate into this room. They don't have it up on the screen, but when the news broke and the alerts went out on the phones, everyone just jumping up and down, the crowd roaring, and it's not even halfway full yet. I don't think they were expecting this to be called so early, but as you can see, just a room full of very happy Mamdani supporters at this point. And if you think about it, it's pretty unbelievable. Mamdani just 9-ish months ago was not even registering in the polls. He was at less than 1%. He was a little-known Democratic Socialist Assembly member from Astoria. And, you know, he had a free bus pilot, which was sort of his claim to fame in Albany. And then he used social media and his quite skillful messaging abilities to reach out to New Yorkers with a campaign about affordability, about free buses, a campaign to freeze the rent on stabilized apartments, a campaign to provide affordable child care to families with children up to the ages of 5, something that Governor Kathy Hochul has now signed on to. Many people said it would be impossible for a Democratic Socialist to be elected as the Democratic nominee here in New York City, the capitalist capital of the country. And now we see this result in a general election. It has been quite a journey. He has faced death threats on the campaign trail. He has faced negative campaigning. He has had to clean up a lot of his past comments about the NYPD. Some New Yorkers will not be happy about this result. There are Jewish New Yorkers who are uncomfortable with his positions on Israel and some of his statements or the language he has chosen on this subject. But at the end of the day, Mamdani's message on affordability resonated with New Yorkers, and it wasn't just younger New Yorkers or the young New Yorkers who joined the electorate because of Mamdani, who he brought into the fold. It was also older New Yorkers, many of whom are living on fixed incomes and who felt that Mamdani was campaigning for a New York that they could afford to continue to grow old in and maintain some quality of life. this is not a huge surprise if we've been watching the polls, because all those polls had him between 10 and 25 points ahead. But, you know, there was the sense that this might be tightening at the end of the day. We don't know the final margin yet. I'm still looking to see the numbers are still coming in. But at the end of the day, Mamdani resonated with people. His message resonated, and now it will be fascinating to see, A, whether he can deliver on the promises that he has made, B, whether this victory here in New York City, the capital of, you know, corporate America, whether that victory here will sort of predict a change for Democrats nationally. What will this mean for the midterm elections? Will President Trump try to carry through on his threats to punish New York City with less funding? Will he continue his ICE raids? How will this play out? There's so many questions. This has been a race that some have framed as at the heart of the politics of our country, a race about capitalism versus socialism, a race about crime-fighting strategies and justice, a race that pitted old against young. It's been a very intense race. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo attempted to make a comeback. He was presumed to be the front runner in the primary. It's what the polls showed. He lost. He decided to stay in the race. Put a lot of pressure on Eric Adams, the sitting mayor, to drop out. And ultimately, after resisting, Mayor Adams dropped out of the race, which many people thought would be a big assist to Cuomo because they have a similar base, working class black voters who support their candidacies. But at the end of the day, I think the key thing about Mayor Eric Adams and his role in all of this is that New Yorkers were upset by the corruption charges in City Hall, and even though he denied ever doing anything wrong or breaking any laws, there was all of the skepticism and suspicion about President Donald Trump perhaps assisting to get his charges dismissed. It didn't sit well with New Yorkers, and I think it was that confluence of events, the affordability resonating, the frustration here in New York with President Trump's policies on immigration, all of these things coming together, and the candidate in former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is familiar to many people and who many people felt did a good job during the pandemic and gave people confidence, but who also had a flawed record, and a record he tried to avoid talking about throughout the primary. He said himself that he needed to do a better job in the general election of appealing to voters. He tried to reach out to independents, to Democrats, and especially in these last couple of days to Republicans. But President Donald Trump may not have done Cuomo many favors by pushing voters to go out and vote for him and letting the world know, here in New York City at least, that Andrew Cuomo was his choice. Because, of course, while that might help some Republicans choose to vote for Cuomo, it put Cuomo in a difficult position with Democrats, with whom, at least here in New York, Trump is fairly unpopular. And, you know, one other interesting note is that we saw it in the primary, too. Zohran Mamdani had the ability to win over some of the same voters who voted for Trump in 2024. And it's really less for some of these voters about right versus left or Republican versus Democrat. There was really a sense in this race that voters wanted something different. They wanted something outside the machine, a departure from what they viewed as being corruption at several levels of their government. And so here we are. That's the latest for now from Mamdani headquarters.
All right, Melissa, one question before you go, because I was just seeing here that Hakeem Jeffries said earlier on Meet the Press Now, probably before the polls closed, but based on what was expected, that the election results will be replicated in the midterms. But Natalie and I were talking about this, that Democratic leadership, and two of them are prominent right here from New York, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, were either slow to endorse or didn't endorse. And moving forward now, what does that look like Zohran Mamdani was careful not to criticize them. But what do you think now, looking in your crystal ball?
Well, if you said that House Minority Leader Jeffries said that this result is going to be replicated in the primaries, the only thing about that is that, you have a far left candidate winning in a general election. And what that might mean in some of the midterm elections is that establishment incumbent Democrats might be facing challenges, primary challenges from the left. If that's what is resonating with voters, if that's what it takes to win the midterms, that's part of the message that comes out of this Mamdani victory, right? I mean, it's more about where the Democrats are, and it could cause, an even deeper rift between the center and the left wing of the party. Chuck Schumer, you're right, he didn't endorse, and he would not say when he came out of the polling booth today for whom he had cast his ballot. Jeffries was a little late to the party in terms of endorsing Mamdani, but he ultimately did. But then, just a couple of days ago, when asked whether Mamdani was the future of the party, Hakeem Jeffries said no. So, there you have it. Mamdani's affordability message, whether or not he's a socialist, whether or not he was controversial and said 4 years ago that he wanted to defund and dismantle the police. At the end of the day, obviously, the overwhelming number of New York City voters didn't care. They felt that Mamdani was addressing their issues, and it's that sort of populist, unpolitician vibe that perhaps drew people to Donald Trump.
I mean, you're right, in fairness, Melissa, and thank you. We're going to get on to Andrew, but Jeffries was probably likely talking about the congressional midterms, but I do think this will have to be factored into a national strategy, perhaps.
Interesting to see.
Was a little different in what played out here, but yes.
Interesting to see if he will get that support that Melissa's talking about there. Okay, we want to get to Andrew Sif with reaction tonight from the Cuomo campaign now that Mamdani is the projected winner. Andrew.
Well, it's been pretty muted in here. We can tell you there was a cheer as they were updating the vote, and Mamdani dropped below 50%, and Cuomo rose up as high as 42% of the vote. So right now they're talking about margin, but since NBC has already projected Mamdani as the winner, clearly there is no celebrating taking place here at the Ziegfeld Ballroom, although the soundtrack is still playing. We don't have any update as to when the former governor is supposed to speak. Initially, the thought was that he would arrive here around 10 p.m. Now, their hope for today was that Curtis Sliwa's support would collapse, and to some degree it did. Remember, in some of the polls, Sliwa was up around 20%, and he's clearly been in the single digits as these tabulations come in. Another part of their hope would be strong turnout for Cuomo, and that seems to have happened as he's hitting his targets in a lot of the neighborhoods across the city. But the third component of a Cuomo victory did not come to pass, and that is that Zohran Mamdani's young supporters, the ones that came out and propelled him to victory in the primary, would stay home or be affected by some of the renewed questions about Mamdani's qualifications, lack of experience, democratic socialist policies, etc., and that would tamp down his support. That third component of the necessary recipe for Cuomo did not come to pass. So they're all processing that here. As always, everyone affiliated with a Cuomo campaign awaits their marching orders from Cuomo himself, and we expect to get some kind of guidance soon about when he'll arrive here, when he's expected to speak. Unclear what kind of message he will draft. You may recall that back in the primary, a very soft-spoken concession speech back in June, he talked about calling Mamdani to congratulate him, saying that he would step back from politics and take a moment to digest. It'll be interesting to see whether that's his message tonight or whether he strikes more of the firebrand message that he used to close the campaign, talking about the existential crisis facing New York City. Guys, back to you.
Andrew, thank you so much. Adam Cooperstein, Gilma Avalos back with you here as we continue our special streaming coverage of Decision 2025. And now the key races have been called. Projected winners in the New York City mayor's race, as you just saw with Andrew Sif there. Zohran Mamdani, the 34-year-old socialist, an upstart, a candidate that really changed the electorate here in New York City. and also has drawn harsh criticism from opponents, looking like he is now the projected winner. The question, though, that I was going to ask Andrew or Melissa, if we can get either one of them, Gilma, we've been talking about this. We knew this would be a race, according to the polls, that he was the front runner. He had the edge, but would he clear 50%? It looks like that's the question now. Is this going to be the first time a projected winner, a New York City mayor, wins an election in the general without clearing 50% in decades?
Guys, if I can weigh in here, that was a huge part of the Cuomo campaign when he was making the case for Curtis Sliwa to drop out and to set up a one-on-one, because Cuomo's argument was that Mamdani can't hit 50%, that more than half of New York doesn't want Mamdani as mayor. So the best way for Mamdani and his supporters to quiet that argument would be if he does clear 50%. And we've been seeing, as the numbers come in, fluctuating with about 85% of the returns in there. But the last one we saw, he's slightly above 50%. That does put a dent in that argument that former Governor Cuomo made, that more than half of New York doesn't want him. Clearing that 50% hurdle, clearly an important threshold for both Mamdani and for Cuomo's ability to accept the results.
Build a website you love with Wix. For your words,
here of the mayoralty in New York City, becoming the first Muslim mayor of the city at 34 years old, though he is not the youngest mayor in the city. In fact, there is at least one other 34-year-old, which they called the boy mayor in Manhattan, in New York City, and a 31-year-old. But supporters celebrating this
it's
historic
been a long
moment.
time. Yeah.
Yes.
So Andrew,
You know,
question. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, earlier today, Cuomo said, I'm 67 years old, and this is the most important election of my lifetime. So he was stressing that, he said, I'm not a kid, which was a little bit of a jab at his opponent, but saying regardless of your age, Cuomo was characterizing this mayoral election as the most important of his lifetime. Go ahead, guys.
And as we're on the subject of age certainly playing a really big role here in these results tonight. Voters under the age of 45 seem to come out for Zohran Mamdani. Those over the age of 45 seem to prefer Cuomo, and the early voting reports showed us that some 19% of voters under the age, I believe, you'll correct me on this, Andrew, I believe under the age of 30 voted in this early in the election.
Right, that sounds right. But I do want to point out, Mamdani was asked during the early voting period if he was concerned about the early group of voters being older. And Mamdani's answer was pretty interesting. He said, seniors are affected by affordability, too. They're worried about cuts in Medicaid and Medicare. They're worried about the high cost of housing. And undoubtedly, if you look at exit polls, if you interview older New Yorkers, they were not universally against Zohran Mamdani. In fact, you'll find older voters who found his message and focus on affordability resonated. That might be some of the reason why the margin may end up where it is. This was not just a little squeaker where the young voters propelled this upstart to victory. A cross-section of New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs have delivered this margin thus far as it gets closer and closer to a fuller picture of the city.
Andrew, you're over there at the Cuomo campaign headquarters, and we saw, as you mentioned, the last time in the primary when Cuomo was defeated, he was also deflated. What do we expect to see from the former governor?
Yeah.
This is a man who just a few years ago was considered one of the brightest Democrats in the nation on the national stage after COVID. Of course, scandal took that down, and then he lost in the primary. And I'm wondering what you think is the tone from Andrew Cuomo tonight.
I have a feeling, having covered him a long time, that he's going to deliver a great speech. I also think that he is going to be grateful because he's going to end up with a tremendous amount of support. The numbers now have him over 40% of the vote. which exceeds what many of the polls showed. So he's going to feel validated in some of his messaging, that so many New Yorkers did select his experience or embrace his message. But I think he's also going to show respect for the fact that many New Yorkers wanted to go in a different direction. Now, Cuomo has been characterizing in recent days and weeks a civil war in the Democratic Party. That is a message that I think he knows is not a helpful message for Democrats right now, who must move beyond this election night into next year as they move towards the midterms, as they move towards Kathy Hochul's primary in the gubernatorial race. I think you'll see Andrew Cuomo recharacterize what he has described as a civil war as a notion that Democrats are going to have to learn to make room for all different types in the party. I think Cuomo's going to sort of take credit for expanding the message in New York City. That would be my guess, and I would also expect him to echo what he did in June, to strike a note of being gracious towards Zohran Mamdani, even though throughout the campaign that was not his tone towards his opponent.
And my next question here, Andrew, perhaps Cuomo himself doesn't have an answer to. What do you think the next chapter holds for Cuomo in a post-politics world?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, you assume it's post-politics. He still has money in his campaign account. In theory, he could run for governor next year. Many people will say, bad idea, you're coming off losing in the primary, losing in the general, that doesn't make sense. But he would never rule it out. But I do think you could see a life for him as a political analyst. You could see a life for him as an attorney, a consultant. It's been reported that he made millions of dollars in his consulting business last year. So he has lucrative knowledge to fall back on. He'll have another chapter in his future for sure.
Andrew, I've got the NBC News exit polling for the mayor's race in front of me, and I think there's a few really fascinating numbers. This is the one that the anti-Mamdani crowd is going to seize on, okay? The exit polling shows that if it was a two-man race and only Mamdani and Cuomo were running, 47 would vote for Mamdani, 44% for Cuomo, showing a race within that margin for error. Was this election actually decided weeks ago when it was clear it's not going to be a two-man race?
You know what? I think one of the things Mamdani will seize on, as the current numbers show, Mamdani has a bigger lead than the total number of votes for Curtis Sliwa. So he's going to make the case that even if Sliwa had dropped out, he wins anyway. What we haven't also seen is how many votes have we been checking in? How many votes Eric Adams, the last vote total I saw, only about 5,000 votes or 0.3%. Jim Walden, who was on the ballot, next to nothing. 6,000 for Eric Adams, so not dispositive of anything. But Curtis Sliwa, at the moment, you know, the Cuomo campaign might characterize him as a spoiler, but right now, Mamdani exceeds by quite a bit the Curtis Sliwa margin in this race. So even if it was one-on-one, I think you'll see the Mamdani folks say the affordability message would have won the day, but we'll also never know, because certainly Team Cuomo.
Okay, Andrew Schiff, thank you so much.
New Jersey Governor-elect Mikey Sherrill is addressing her supporters right now. Let's go there.
But man, with this vote, you guys just scream from the rooftops. And people around the country have heard you. I hear you too. This was a tough fight, and this is a tough state. But I know you, New Jersey, and I love you. for you. I've spoken with thousands of you over this last year. I know your struggles. I know your hopes. I know your dreams. So serving you is worth any tough fight I have to take on, and I am incredibly honored to be your next governor. When I was 18, I raised my hand and I swore to defend the Constitution. And that moment defines me. It taught me that leadership means carrying the weight of other people's hopes, standing firm when it's easier to bend, and always putting the common good above personal gain. And I know how hard it can be to serve in these times. And I just got a call from Jack Ciattarelli, and I want to recognize him for stepping up. And all of you know, I love our history, and our state motto has always stuck with me. In 1777, New Jersey was one of the first states to choose a motto. Anybody? Liberty and prosperity. I'm going to get some more civics education going. We'll get that known by all. But it was a demand for freedom from oppression and a commitment to creating better opportunity and a better future. That idea has defined us for almost 250 years. We fought for liberty at the crossroads of the American Revolution, turning the tide for our young nation at the battles of Trenton and Princeton. We offered prosperity as we built the nation during the Industrial Revolution. We've been the cradle of scientific discovery, inventing everything from the light bulb to the laser. Liberty and prosperity. I've seen the genius in that motto over the last year, because both are essential in our democracy. And as the president is backing away from this ideal, cutting SNAP, ripping away health care, terminating Gateway, we here in New Jersey are bound to fight for a different future for our children. We see how clearly important liberty is. We know that no one in our great state is safe when our neighbors are targeted, ignoring the law and the Constitution. But prosperity is equally essential. Liberty alone is not enough if the government makes it impossible for you to feed your family, to get a good education, or to get a good job. So in this country, that shouldn't be too much to ask. But right now, all of it seems at risk. Governors have never mattered more. And in this state, I am determined to build prosperity for all of our citizens. And I've heard from thousands of you about what liberty and prosperity mean to you, what it's going to take for your family to thrive. So I hear you, Newark. I'm going to work with communities from the ground up so all of our neighbors thrive. I hear you, Sham, so I'm going to declare a state of emergency on day one to drive down your utility costs. I hear you, Westfield, so I'm going to make sure our kids are safe online and schools have the resources they need to address the mental health crisis. I hear you, Jersey City, so I'm going to hold government accountable, balancing individual liberty with collective responsibility, ensuring people are safe, healthy, educated, and free to pursue their dreams. I hear you, New Jersey. Good government doesn't just manage problems, it solves them. So I'm going to continue to listen and work with you to move our state forward, because I have learned so much as I've traveled our state. Our innovations, our businesses, our inventors and entrepreneurs have amazed me, but it's the people that have left the biggest mark. especially those who are fighting for prosperity for their entire communities. I was moved during my block walk in Trenton with Shanique as she spoke so passionately about the promise of her city and her neighbors despite the challenges. I love the group of young men from Monroe who've been hard at work on this campaign. They want a seat at the table and they're ready to fight for their future. The little girls who come up to me to say that they're going to be a governor or they're going to be a president. It reminds me of my own belief that anything was possible. Akeem's team, who worked their butts off knocked over 60,000 doors. Akeem told me these are not the kids who will succeed in Trump's vision of this country, but they will in mine. The men and women in labor. Union jobs at a time when our economy is set up to make it harder and harder for working people. You know what? They don't just fight for their brothers and sisters in labor. They fight for all of us. For working families everywhere, so everyone has a shot. So thank you. Thank you to each and every person here tonight and across the state who's worked hard over the last year. Thanks to the thousands of volunteers who made millions of calls, texts, and canvases, to everyone who's ready to stand and demand a better future for our kids and our families. To my running mate, Dr. Dale Caldwell. You've already served our state so well, and I'm proud to have you by my side as we embark upon this new chapter for New Jersey. To my team, who put together a campaign the likes of this state has never seen, and helped in our efforts to create a great future for New Jersey. And thanks to my family, who put up with missed soccer games, lacrosse games, football games, volleyball games, swim meets, and rugby games, all to put up with this, so thank you. And a special thanks to my husband, Jason. Through 4 kids, 2 dogs, a hamster, numerous goldfish, 5 campaigns, an insurrection, and 2 impeachments, you have been a truly amazing partner. So thank you to everyone who's joined me in fighting for a better future. I know these are tough times. I know not everyone voted for me, but I'm working for everyone. Every single one of you. When we all do better, we all do better. So tomorrow begins a new day. And at each new day in New Jersey, the sun rises over the Statue of Liberty, a daily reminder of her promise. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. She declares that her lamp lights the path to the golden door. That golden door is New Jersey. It always has been. And that expectation is well deserved, especially after this election, where we chose.
You've been watching the future governor of New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill, addressing supporters there at her campaign headquarters. But right now, we want to bring viewers up to speed on Decision 2025 who've been watching the NBA game on NBC4. So please.
However you book, first check Kayak to find great deals and filter out flights you maybe don't want, like ones with layovers.
A big night in Decision 2025. NBC News has projected Zohran Mamdani as New York City's next mayor. Here's a look at the results. Mamdani with 50% of the vote, Andrew Cuomo with 42% of the vote, and Curtis Sliwa with 7%. And that is with 88% of the precincts reported.
Now we want to take a look here at the New Jersey governor's race. Let's take a look here. We have Mikey Sherrill, the projected winner, 56% of the vote. We have Jack Ciattarelli coming in with 43%. That is with 83% of the precincts reporting here tonight. We do want to give you a live look now. This is from East Brunswick. This is where Mikey Sherrill is speaking with reporters at this hour.
Stay with News 4 for more election results. Our live coverage continues on YouTube, the NBC4 New York app, or wherever you stream in News 4. And of course, we'll have complete coverage on News 4 at 11.
Continue our election night coverage now. You are looking at the confetti falling over Mikey Sherrill after a hard-fought race. Projected New Jersey governor celebrating in a victory speech addressing supporters tonight.
In that speech, she said that Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican nominee, called her to concede the race. She also said that, in her opinion, she is going to make sure she works for everyone, even the 40+% who did not vote for her. She also promised to drive down utility costs, improve schools, lower those property taxes, a lot of the promises that she made during the campaign. And she also made this comment, Gilma, that I thought was interesting. Governors have never mattered more. Clearly, a comment directed at the White House and talking about the Trump administration, which loomed large over this race from the get-go. It's something that Democrats tonight, as we've seen the win in Virginia in the governor's race, the win in the New York City mayoral race, and now New Jersey with the governor's race, the Trump factor certainly mattered. Trump not on the ballot, but a lot of Democrats inspired to vote based on exit polls because of their opposition to President Trump.
Yeah, exit polls suggesting that 38% of voters said that Trump was a factor in their decision to vote for New Jersey governor. All right, joining us now is Michael Duffy, adjunct associate professor of public service at NYU. And we're here discussing so many moments happening tonight, so many of the critical races that we were covering. Let's begin with the mayoral victory for Zohran Mamdani. So much has been made of the promises, the way that affordability resonated with voters. So on day one, what will he have to do to keep those promises?
So there's an old adage that goes that candidate campaigns in poetry, but has to govern in prose. And so we saw soaring rhetoric from Zohran Mamdani. Even those, I think, who were not supporters were probably impressed and maybe even a little inspired by some of his rhetoric. But come January 1st, it's going to be a tough road to hoe in terms of fulfilling the promises that he made with regard to making the buses free. It's something he's going to have to go to Albany in order to do to get the MTA to change its policy. So there are a number of ways that governing is going to be much more difficult than campaigning. By the way, the author of that adage was Mario Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo's father.
We're looking at the numbers there. If we can pop that up just for one more moment so we can get you to address the results that we're seeing. 88% of the votes are in New York City. We first got that big early voting chunk, which showed Mamdani with a pretty commanding lead. Cuomo cut into that lead with the day of voting, and now it's about 50%. You see Zohran Mamdani with just above 50% to Cuomo's just under 42, Curtis Sliwa down to 7%. What do you make of that spread there when we saw some of the polling indicating that Sliwa would be higher? Some of the polling showed that Cuomo would be lower. What do you make of what we've seen so far with 88%?
So I think there's two theories. One is that the president weighing in at the end had some effect on some of the Republicans who otherwise might have voted for Sliwa. On the other hand, there may have been sort of voter remorse or buyer's remorse for some of the supporters of Sliwa, not wanting to, quote, waste their vote and wanting it to have some effect in the race. So I think either is possible and something that exit polls and other kind of survey data will tell us in the days and weeks to come.
You know, Michael, we also have to ask you about this New Jersey governor's race. That's pretty fascinating. When you look at a race that was considered a toss-up by many of the polls, and now we see Mikey Sherrill just gave her victory speech. She is the future governor of New Jersey. And again, not all the votes are counted, but this race was called earlier than people thought. Her lead is much bigger than a lot of the polls indicated. What do we make of that result?
So interesting night for the so-called badass caucus in the House. These are women who were elected 5 years ago. The two of them, Abigail Spanberger from Virginia, former CIA analyst, and Mikey Sherrill, former Navy fighter pilot. The two of them winning, I think they had great biographies that seemed to connect with the voters. I think some of her, and you heard the rhetoric from her speech tonight in terms of electricity rates, big issue in New Jersey. You saw, I think, some of the polling you showed earlier about the concerns of voters when it comes to affordability. So she, I think, connected with that. And you can't help but wonder what the Trump effect was in New Jersey, a state where the president is not popular. Interesting that he did not campaign in person for Ciattarelli, and instead did a telephone call-in in order to express his support. So trying to walk a fine line between motivating the base and not alienating the independents and moderates who needed to break his way in order for him to pull off a win.
If we're looking at the Virginia gubernatorial race and the New Jersey gubernatorial race as a bellwether, what does it tell us about where we are and what you are looking at for the 2026 midterms?
Well, in New Jersey, they've upset the pattern that usually holds where Trenton and the governor's mansion goes between one party to the other. So that clearly, I think, is making a statement. I think the size of the victory was surprising given some of the polls. I think, honestly, a lot of Democrats, after the results of the last few elections, were just anxious that the normal laws of politics didn't seem to apply to Republicans. And it seems tonight that perhaps they do.
I have to ask you, you worked in the Bloomberg administration, and we know he was a 3-term mayor here in New York, but there is something that he and Zohran Mamdani have in common, even though we know he endorsed Governor Cuomo in this race. There was, I think, at least 2 of the Bloomberg victories were elections where he won about 50% of the vote, narrow victories. Mamdani, it might be an 8-point spread, but there's still 50% of New York City that didn't want him to be the mayor. What's the challenge for him as he enters into this really important office with half the city not wanting him to be in that position?
I think that's a great point. I think Bloomberg's 3rd term, and I remember being there election night, we expected it to be an easy victory, and we expected to be done by 9:30, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and going towards midnight, and they still hadn't called the race. To your point, it was surprisingly close. I think his 3rd term was probably his least successful, and perhaps the closeness of the margin really constrained him politically. I think the same is going to be true for Mamdani. You can't take away the fact that there's a lot of excitement about his win, but barely getting a majority is not an overwhelming mandate in order to go and get the kinds of things that he needs done from Albany, all the changes that he needs with regard to childcare, to buses, to grocery stores. A lot of the roads to enact those things do go through Albany.
Yeah, you just brought up childcare. We do know that Mayor Eric Adams had to make cuts to the budget, including cuts to early education. He had to restore some of them because of the outrage. This is going to be a tough road to make good on some of these promises.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, one of the things that's sort of lurking down the road is the renewal of mayoral control of schools. So that expires in June. Mamdani on the campaign trail has said he is not for mayoral control of schools. Leaves a lot of people sort of scratching their head why he would willingly sort of give away that authority to really shape something that he's going to be held accountable for. But that's been his position in the campaign. We'll see if that holds over the next several months as he makes his way in his first couple of months of his mayoralty.
Okay, Michael, hang tight. We're going to get back to you in a moment. But right now we want to go to the headquarters of the big winner tonight in New York City. Zohran Mamdani, the projected winner of the New York City mayor's race. Melissa Russo is there for what I can only imagine is a massive celebration after a very difficult campaign.
Yeah, the crowd is not necessarily shocked by the results, but they are definitely pumped. And I will tell you that when the numbers come up on the screen showing that Zohran Mamdani is at 50%, I think that this crowd views that as passing a threshold, right? I just heard your conversation about whether 50% is a mandate. 50% is not a mandate, perhaps in a, in a two-person race, but in a three-person race where it was so hard fought and you were an inexperienced Democratic socialist with a controversial past and you were up against a known former governor, three-term governor, who managed to attract $40-some-odd million to be invested into super PACs to try to stop your campaign. The question on the campaign trail that I've heard over and over again to Mamdani is, if you don't make it to 50%, will you then not have a mandate? And I've heard him say that he thinks any victory would be a mandate. But I wouldn't rate the 50% mark in a three-way race where so much money was spent to try to defeat him. That said, it is true that there are challenges ahead. Some of the things, just looking forward, that I see coming up pretty quickly. Zohran Mamdani has said that he will offer Jessica Tisch, the current police commissioner, the opportunity to stay on. He's never said exactly whether they've discussed it at length. She's never said whether they've discussed it. We assume there must have been some conversation in order for him to come out and say that he would offer her the job, because it's doubtful he would put himself in that position if he didn't have some idea that she might be willing to stay. But we know that there are areas of their views on policing that are pretty divergent. So that'll be one of the next storylines to emerge out of all of this. Is Jessie Tisch going to stay? We've always heard being police commissioner is her dream job. And she's very popular and widely believed to have been successful in driving down some crime and also rooting out corruption at one police plaza. We have questions about whether Zohran Mamdani's tax proposals, an increase in the personal income tax and a 2% increase in the corporate tax rate that he has been pitching as a way of paying for the actually 9 of the $10 billion in new programs that he is pitching. We may not see him get all of that tax increase. Governor Hochul is running for re-election next year. She has clearly said she does not support an increase in the personal income tax. She's not said that she would definitely rule out a corporate tax increase. And we have to remember now that Governor Hochul and other Democrats who have backed Zohran Mamdani are now somewhat invested in his success. And interestingly, unlike Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo, who campaigned on the fact that he had 11 years in office, working with all of the levers of power in Albany, he ultimately had support from none of the leaders in Albany who had worked with him over the years, and many of them had soured on him, including his successor, Kathy Hochul, who he handpicked as his lieutenant governor. Zohran Mamdani, conversely, had the support of Kathy Hochul, the Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, and the Assembly Speaker, Carl Hastie. And so, they now, with their endorsement of him and the message coming out of New York, with all eyes on New York, that this is a message that resonated here in the capitalist headquarters of the country, they're invested in his success to some extent. So some of these plans, he's going to have to deliver on some of them, and they're sort of in it with him in the sense that they are probably going to have to help him succeed to some extent. Child care is something that Kathy Hochul has said is her top priority. Will all children up to age 5 get universal child care next year or the year after? Probably not. It'll probably be phased in somehow. There's this Department of Community Safety that Zohran Mamdani has proposed. We don't know exactly how long he thinks that will take to set up, but that's going to be an interesting experiment in New York to see whether there can be a successful, different approach to handling the issues of mental health, not always using the NYPD as the first line of defense. And then there's the question of freezing the rent. Go ahead.
Well, I know that there's so much to get to, and we're going to get back to you, Melissa, but we're also awaiting that speech from Zohran Mamdani, and as soon as he gets out there with that crowd anxiously awaiting his victory speech, we'll bring it to you here on NBC4.
And our pet battle is in East Brunswick, New Jersey, where another victory party continues there. Pat, what can you tell us?
It is well underway here. The confetti was flying a few minutes ago. Mikey Sherrill came down off that podium and is now working her way through her crowds of supporters, taking selfies, hugging folks, and just all accepting all the congratulations that come with this hard-fought race. She said it just like that. It was a hard-fought race, but as she worked her way across the state of New Jersey, she said she listened to what the people were telling her about their living conditions, affordability, the electric rates, those basic bottom line kitchen table issues that she says impact every New Jerseyan and of course people all over the country. And she believes that is what resonated with voters to give her this incredible margin of victory. And frankly, as I was working my way through the crowd to get to her, we spoke to her very briefly one-on-one as she was taking her little
structure of that is going to look like is very much at the heart of conversations right now around the country, but it was interesting very much to hear her take.
Well, Sam, it was also interesting when she said that we've been called socialists our entire lives. She said
she voted at Hillside Elementary School in Montclair, where she lives with her husband and 4 children. They were on the stage with her as she made that victory speech, which you heard live on our air. Mikey Sherrill says this is a resounding repudiation of what is coming out of Washington these days and the Trump administration. As you heard throughout this campaign, she worked hard to tie Jack Ciattarelli to Donald Trump, and they believe the failed policies of this administration is what drove voters here in New Jersey to the polls in such great numbers and gave her this double-digit victory tonight when the polls were saying it was too close to call. But as we all know, when people step into that voting booth, it's what they do when they push that button that counts. And obviously, they pushed the button for Mikey Sherrill tonight. She also had what she called that blue firewall, the early voting numbers. You were talking about it in New York. Andrew Zipp was talking.
Is the front runner, I believe, for 2028 on the
polls
Democrat
don't necessarily
side
bear that up right now. But
for president. I am telling you, she is as charismatic as anybody else. This is the party of Mamdani. It is the party of AOC. They are the ones leading the torch. And you see people like Bernie Sanders doing interviews with her, kind of giving her the go-ahead to be that person on their side. So I expect to see a whole lot more of her. Her messaging is something that I think resonates with the Democrat base. I, for one, think it's a disaster, but I also want more of it. I want her to keep going.
Actually, is this the party of Mamdani and AOC? Does Hogan have a point? And do you see her? I mean, she's obviously gotten a lot of buzz. Could she be a Senate candidate? Could she be a presidential candidate?
No, I wouldn't say the Democratic Party belongs to any one particular candidate or elected official. I don't believe that. I think what AOC's been saying is a consistent message she's saying since she showed up on the scene, which is that, again, life is unaffordable for too many people. And that is the part that's resonating. But each one of these candidates, you know, run to their local districts or to their local state. You look at somebody like Spanberger. Spanberger is not anywhere close to AOC. And so one could argue, as well as she performed tonight, it could be a Spanberger party. I mean, like, why wouldn't it be? So I just think that, you know, the party is as diverse as it is. The question, though, I think where Republicans are going to have to start examining is why did they lose those Latino voters in those counties? Is it the immigration issue? Is it the deportation? I mean, they've got to start to unpack why they're losing that coalition.
Well, Hallie, you have the first post from President Trump.
Don't you set me up with hot reporting. It's a truth social.
It's a
That's
truth
all. I'm going to be honest about that.
He's got his own take, though.
He has an answer to that.
He has an answer to that question.
His thoughts on this. The president has posted online now, to your point here, Kristen, which you're totally right about. And he thinks that the president has suggested there's two reasons, Ashley, to your point, as to why Republicans didn't do better. Number one, because his name was not on the ballot. And number two, because of the government shutdown. And so, that as I think insight into where the president's head is at here, he was not on the ballot. And I understand the president's always on the ballot. Physically, his name is not on the ballot. This isn't a presidential year. And this has been exactly to the point that we're talking about here. If his name is not on the ballot, what happens to that quote-unquote Trump coalition, those first-time voters, those independents, et cetera? Because to all the discussion here around what is the brand of the Democratic Party, I'm struck by something that our darling friend Steve Kornacki said just a couple days ago when that new NBC News poll came out, this sort of under-the-radar thing that he was watching, which was about what our poll showed on the Democratic brand. Only about a third of Democrats view socialism favorably. Now, fewer view it negatively than they did last year, but 35% is not, an overwhelming majority of the party that views socialism favorably. So I just think this is all sort of part and parcel of the context. And can I be sort of like, whatever for a second? I think this goes back to the point that we've all been making, which is like maybe there's not one crystal clear takeaway from tonight, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe nuance exists.
And there's a lot of nuance. I think you're right about that.
Well, that's kind of the overarching question that I have, and that is, everyone talked about the political realignment that has been happening over the past few years under Donald Trump that was crystallized in the 2024 elections. So what happened to that political realignment? Is it not a permanent realignment? Yeah. Do all those Democratic autopsies that started coming out last week that are going to start continue to come out over the next few weeks about the last election in 2024, do those mean anything? Do they throw those out the door? Or have they figured out what the path is, and that's just affordability, don't talk about cultural issues, healthcare, the things that they think that they can win on in this current environment. But, the Trump voter is the one that mystifies Republicans and Democrats, because Republicans need them to come out when Trump's name is not on the ballot.
Yeah.
And Republicans haven't been able to figure out how to get them to the polls when his name is not.
It's a really important point. I do want to head out to NBC's Julie Sirkin, who joins us from the Ciattarelli headquarters, where, Julie, you actually have some reporting about what people are starting to say about the campaign that was run by Jack Ciattarelli. What are your sources telling you?
Yeah, well, all night long, people have been crowding around our little screen here because there was no other monitor in this room. One woman told me it's because they know that he's not doing well right after the polls closed at 8 o'clock. I was struck by a conversation I had with a voter yesterday, but first let me tell you what I got from the room today, and that is I spoke to a couple of voters who voted for President Trump who said that they are not hot on the job that he's been doing, and they told me that they think Ciattarelli has been doing a good job walking a line between his support of the president, of course trying to ride his coattails, if you will, of the margins that the president was able to eat into in New Jersey in November, but at the same time realizing that Sherrill, his Democratic opponent and now the governor-elect, made all of her campaign, almost all of it, all of her ads were about painting Ciattarelli as very closely tied to Trump, as being ultra MAGA. And that voter here tonight told me that that seemed to work in Sherrill's favor. Yesterday, I was struck by a woman I spoke to in Passaic County, a Latino voter who voted for President Trump in November. She told me almost instantly did she regret her vote, as did most of the people that she knows. Why? Because of immigration, because of those deportations, the ICE raids. And that is the community that Ciattarelli needed to turn out for him today. The numbers I'm just struck by. This race was not close at all, as we've been talking about, and the turnout for Ciattarelli was not there. Perhaps they were less excited to come out and vote for him than they were excited about his opponent, Sherrill. But all in all here, I think there's a takeaway from voters that perhaps his alignment to the president, even if he tried to distance himself yesterday, including in our interview, didn't work in his favor. Kristen?
Great reporting. Julie Sirkin, thank you so much. We really appreciate it from the headquarters of Jack Ciattarelli. I do want to go back now to NBC News Chief Data Analyst Steve Kornacki, who's been following all of the key races tonight. Steve, I've been texting with some of my sources who make the point this is a big night for Democrats, not just because they're sweeping these races, but because of what we've been talking about, the margins.
The margins, yeah, and I think we were talking a few minutes ago in New Jersey about these voters who were available to Republicans like Jack Ciattarelli when Trump wasn't president, and clearly are not now that Trump is back as president. And I think you look ahead to 2026, and I understand, that these are blue states, but there's going to be congressional districts that are up in 2026, competitive districts, Republican districts that Democrats are trying to flip. And I think that type of voter looms large in a lot of potential battlegrounds next year. So I think this is fascinating from that standpoint. And also, we said from the standpoint of this was something that the polling was suggesting was going to be a problem or a challenge for Ciattarelli, winning over the level of support from Hispanic voters or anything approaching that that Trump was able to last year. By the way, we're saying this in New Jersey. We took a look in Virginia as well. You look at the most heavily Hispanic areas where Trump made some inroads, Prince William County, Loudoun County, even Manassas Park. It's small, but it's the most Hispanic by population city in Virginia. All of those gains from Trump undone tonight in this gubernatorial election. One other thing I did want to show too, just talking about New York City. I had mentioned this before, but just check in because most of the vote is in, and it is hovering at about that 50 to 41, 50 to 42 range. Mamdani, just a touch over 50% right now with these returns. We'll see if he finishes on the north or south side of that. But I think I'd mentioned it earlier, and I wanted to make sure to show it to you. We did ask this question in our exit poll of New York City voters. If this were a two-way race, just Mamdani and Cuomo, how would you vote? And this is what we found. Wow. 47 for Mamdani, 44 for Cuomo, 6 not sure. So, again, one thing that struck me looking at these results tonight was how much the voters sort of decided. There were voters who clearly were not going to vote for Mamdani and really did seem to decide at scale that Curtis Sliwa was not a viable candidate, and they did end up breaking to Cuomo and bringing him, looks like about an 8-9 point loss for him. He was staring at some much deeper gaps in polls. All of those polls that had him with those much deeper gaps had Sliwa getting a much bigger share of the vote. So again, I just think maybe there was no circumstance that Curtis Sliwa was going to drop out of this race. I know there was a lot of pressure on him from folks to do that. Maybe there was no circumstance, but I think if you're Cuomo and you're looking at this, boy, that one might haunt you a little bit. If there was any way you could have pulled it off, any more gestures you could have made or something, because a two-way race here, we got a lot of evidence here, would have been a barn burner in New York City.
It would have been an absolute game changer. Steve, let's go back to Virginia since we haven't talked about it in a little while. Just remind folks of the margins in that race, with Abigail Spanberger becoming the first woman governor-elect of Virginia, and the margin hugely significant there.
Yeah, I mean, when you looked at, we talked about Virginia in 2024 as being a state. It was still a blue state, but Donald Trump had made some real gains in Virginia last year. He got the margin down to 6 points. He lost it by double digits in 2020. So he made gains in Virginia. The story for Trump's gains in Virginia was really, it was a story up here. A lot of it was up here. A lot of it was in Northern Virginia. A lot of it was in these very blue parts of Northern Virginia where they stayed blue, but Trump did a lot better than he had done, a lot better than Republicans had been doing. Had that continued across the rest of the state, Trump might have actually put Virginia in play in 2024. It actually didn't around the rest of the state. So take a look at what's happening tonight. We mentioned Loudoun County earlier. I showed you that enough. Let me show you this one, because this is another giant county here, Northern Virginia, outside D.C., Prince William County. Now, this has been a Democratic county for a while here, but the margin tonight, this is basically a 34-point victory for Abigail Spanberger. Just check this out. This is what it looked like in the presidential race a year ago. It was a Democratic win, but it was only 18 points. Spanberger has essentially doubled Kamala Harris's margin in this gigantic population-dense county outside Northern Virginia. We saw that in Loudoun. We see it in Prince William. We see improvement in Fairfax County. These are giant, giant population centers. So all of the losses, all of the sort of underperformance that Democrats had in 2024 in Northern Virginia, gone. As a matter of fact, you might say this is overperformance even for Spanberger. Does raise the question of the shutdown of federal employees, the importance of the federal government to the economy of Northern Virginia. It does raise the question if that played a role here. And then the other thing that happened for Spanberger, now again, she did represent this area in Congress, but I want to show you Chesterfield because this is big, growing suburban county right outside of Richmond. Now, this is a county last year. This was one of the few big counties in the United States of America that, as the whole country pretty much was becoming more red, became more blue. And that trend continued tonight. So Kamala Harris won this by 9 points last year. Abigail Spanberger wins it by 13 tonight. You take a look. when Glenn Youngkin, the Republican, got elected 4 years ago, he was able to win this county. Again, we're talking about suburban voters who were comfortable voting for a Republican when Donald Trump wasn't president, who aren't comfortable voting for Republicans with Trump back on the scene. So again, the Democratic trend just continuing there.
All right, Steve, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Let's head out to the headquarters of Andrew Cuomo. He is about to address his supporters. Let's take a listen.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. You're taking my time. You're taking my time. First, let me. I love you too. I love you too. Let me acknowledge part of my special campaign team. We have from the right, Telef Lundaval, the new son-in-law, husband of Mariah. We have Mariah, Cara, Michaela. I want to thank our campaign chairman, Bill Mulrow, our great campaign manager, Greg Goldner. I want to thank Mayor Adams, who stepped out of the race to make us more competitive, and that was a very gracious thing to do. I want to thank Mayor Bloomberg, who gave us his support, Governor David Patterson, all the unions. And I am blessed. I am blessed to have the people in this room. You have been a phenomenal team, great friends. You are superstars. Even more, you are New York patriots. And I am proud of you. This campaign was the right fight to wage. And I am proud of what we did and what we did together. This campaign was to contest the philosophies that are shaping the Democratic Party, the future of this city, and the future of this country. And this coalition transcended normal partisan politics. It brought together Democrats and Republicans and independents, joined by the simple fact that their first allegiance is as citizens of New York City. $2 million voters, the largest number in modern political history, cared enough to show up in a municipal election. And 42% voted for us on an independent line. That is the highest percentage in modern history. Ironically, it is just higher than when Mario Cuomo got 40% on an independent line against Ed Koch in 1977. It's also important to note that almost half of New Yorkers did not vote to support a government agenda that makes promises that we know cannot be met. We support an economy.
You've been listening to former Governor Andrew Cuomo deliver his concession speech after NBC News has projected that Zohran Mamdani is now the mayor-elect of New York City. Leanne Caldwell, this is someone who has served decades in public service. Of course, he did resign as governor amid a swirl of various scandals, quite frankly, that he just could not shake in this campaign. So yes, Zohran Mamdani had a message of affordability. Yes, he had an incredibly robust social media campaign, tried to reach voters, younger voters, where they are. And yet, Governor Cuomo struggled with all of those challenges.
Yeah, he absolutely did. I think that a broader theme throughout this election night is actually this generational change. The Democratic Party has been talking about this, as we all know very well, for at least a year, potentially longer. And this is an instance where Democrats in New York City voted for a newer, younger candidate, someone who was less experienced, but they wanted to give a shot. They were done with the old guard. You have Abigail Spanberger, the first zillennial governor of Virginia. She and Mickey Sherrill were the class of 2018, this like young, upcoming class in the House of Representatives. And so there's a lot of movement in the party in this election that the party has been grappling with for quite some time. And a Democratic source texted me when you're looking at the bigger picture of the Democratic Party, making the point that Abigail Spanberger and Sherrill won by bigger margins than Mamdani did. And so when the party is trying to figure out what to make of this, and is it the more moderate, pragmatic faction of the party that is going to be the path forward, or the more liberal, progressive, Democratic Socialist wing of the party, there is a lot of Democrats who are looking at Spanberger over Mamdani.
It's a really fascinating point. Hallie, Zohran Mamdani, 34 years old, has made a lot of promises. He will believe that he has a mandate to execute those.
Power through anything with Predator generators. Available now, only at Harbor Freight.
The question is, he's still got to win over a lot of voters to get behind his policies.
Yeah, if he wants to win their hearts and minds, absolutely. Now that he obviously has won the election, is projected to win the election. And so he's got a road ahead that I think is going to be fascinating to watch, just from like a policy implementation perspective, right? And the way that you're looking at somebody who's staked out this progressive position inside his party, take on, the country's biggest city and try to steer the ship that way. I also think when we look at this night, and I'm looking at the clock here, 10:47 Eastern time, we've talked a lot about these three races on the East Coast. Remember what's happening in California, what arguably may have, not just in California, but this redistricting arms race that's happening across the country, huge implications for 2026. And by the way, for years beyond that as well. And so this is a fascinating one to watch as we're getting close to polls close there.
Yeah, well, you take us to our next reporter perfectly, Hallie. At 11 p.m., polls will close in California, where voters are voting on a ballot measure that would redraw the state's congressional map in favor of Democrats. California's Prop 50 is a direct response to Texas, where the Republican governor signed into law a new map targeting 5 Democratic-held seats. It comes during a nationwide redistricting tug of war, with Republicans eyeing seats in not only Texas, but states like Missouri, Ohio, and North Carolina, while Democrats look to Virginia and New York, in addition to California, for their own edge. NBC's Liz Kreutz joins us from Los Angeles, where this is the big race out there. Liz, I had the opportunity to interview Governor Gavin Newsom. He said he feels confident that Prop 50 will pass. What are you hearing as we anticipate polls closing just moments from now?
Yeah, hey, Kristen, we're about 12 minutes till polls closing here. I just got back from a polling site in LA where there was an extremely long line of people that went down the block, folks waiting to vote in this special election, where there was literally just one question on the ballot, and it is asking people whether or not they support Proposition 50, which would introduce these new congressional maps into the states temporarily for 3 elections up until 2030 that would favor Democrats. And the long line I saw there is not alone. We're seeing images coming in from across the state on college campuses of folks lined up tonight to vote. And I think, Kristen, what it is speaking to is the enthusiasm around this proposition. I think that's even surprised Governor Newsom, perhaps, and top Democrats. I didn't know 2 months ago when it was introduced whether voters were going to really understand sort of what redistricting is and why this matters. Their message seems to work. They have raised $120 million, so much so, as I was telling you earlier, that Governor Newsom's team had to put a statement out last week saying, like, stop donating. We've actually raised more than enough. But we are seeing, as you'd expect, this all down party lines. Republicans are against it. Democrats are supporting it. Here's what some voters told us today, starting with a man who is a Trump supporter. He's against it, followed by a woman who is not registered with the party and is supporting it.
The system is set up already, and it doesn't need to diverge and be something else to benefit one system versus the other. We have enough problems right now.
Why is it important to come out for this special election? What brought you out?
What brought me out? The state of the country? I've been unemployed for over a year. So I have to vote because that's the only way I can voice my opinion.
And that woman's emotion there, guys, I think is really tapping into what Governor Newsom was trying to, I should say, tap into by putting this proposal forward, which is he made the case consistently that this is about more than California, that this proposition is about being able to voice your anger with the Trump administration, protect democracy, and speak out against the direction of this country, guys.
Well, what happens in California could have huge implications for the midterms and for Governor Newsom's own political future if he does decide to run for president. Liz Kreutz, thank you for that great reporting. We'll check back in with you. I do want to go now back to NBC News chief data analyst Steve Kornacki, who's been following all of the big races tonight. And you are watching California. Polls close at 11 p.m. Eastern. What are you going to be watching for there, Steve?
Yeah, at 11 o'clock, you get big batches of votes in these counties. That early vote, a lot of that mail vote comes in. California is a state where a lot of vote comes in fast, and then the rest of it comes in very, very slowly. So if it were a close race, it could take till December. But what have we been seeing tonight? To put this in some perspective, between Virginia, New York City, not surprisingly, and New Jersey, you've seen low approval ratings in the exit polls there for Donald Trump. You see an even lower approval rating for him in California. You see how that's correlated with the results, it appears, in Virginia and in New Jersey. And if you look in California, so much of the messaging that Gavin Newsom and the supporters of this initiative have put forward has been, hey, deliver a message to Donald Trump, fight Donald Trump. If you vote yes, you're doing that. So just you look at Trump's approval rating in the exit poll in California. We have him in the low 30s here. This is a state he lost by 20 points last year. That's a very tough hill to climb for folks who want to defeat this referendum. We do have an exit poll, as I mentioned, that's been conducted there, which we can reveal the full results from at 11 o'clock. We'll get big returns coming in, as I said, fast at 11. So I expect some clarity right away. And I just want to put this in perspective, what the stakes are exactly here. So again, this is about control of the House of Representatives in next year's midterm elections. The way things currently stand, Republicans control the House, and they can afford to lose up to 2 seats. Otherwise, any more than that, they lose control of the House. Now, they have already passed and enacted a new map that could, I stress could, get them up to 5 additional seats out of Texas. What this California map essentially is doing, again, could give Democrats a chance to gain 5 there and wipe out Texas. So essentially, that's what's being decided in the next few minutes when we get these California results. Could California pass this, enact the new maps, and wipe out what the Republicans did in Texas? What would happen then, though, is there are other states where this is playing out. Republicans have enacted a new map in Missouri that could give themselves a new seat there. There's a potential that would go to a referendum. It's complicated. The court ordered, there's a law and court ordering redistricting in Ohio. The new maps have come into place. It could be Republican gains of 2 seats, but they are going to be competitive there. But there could be Republican gains. New maps in North Carolina could be a new Republican gain there. Florida looms as a big possibility. If Republicans are aggressive, they could get 3, maybe 4 new seats out of there. So there are other states coming into the mix. And it's also important because, again, at 2, it's hard to see Republicans controlling the House, especially when you look at some of the results we're seeing tonight. But if Republicans could succeed in a lot of these states in redrawing it, if they could ever defeat this initiative in California, that number could be 10 or more. That would give them a much better chance of holding the House.
And Steve, just to put a fine point on this, if you look at the math, and I want to make sure I understand it accurately, Republicans have a little bit of an edge in this redistricting tit for tat, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's I circle Florida here because I think this could be their biggest single opportunity if they want to be really aggressive. But there's a lot of moving parts here, because when Texas did that and California responded, a lot of other states are getting ideas. Trump and Republicans are putting pressure on a lot of states. Democratic activists are putting pressure. Wisconsin has entered into the conversation now. So who knows exactly where this is going to land? But there are more places, it would appear, where Republicans could do it for 2026.
But what's also interesting here is you've seen in some of these states, I'm thinking of Indiana, for example, these pockets of Republican resistance, right? I mean, these places where it's not as though it's unanimity among the Republican Party that this should move forward, despite the state's governor backing it. On the Democratic side, you look at a state like Maryland, Ashley, and you've got some pushback, even as the governor saying, no, we're going to look into this. You've got some pushback from state-level Democrats there who say, hey, maybe we don't want to go down this road, because once this snowball gets going, like, we sort of lose control.
Are going to weigh in. So the could, I mean, especially in Maryland, I mean, the opposition there to the governor, the state senator, is saying we could actually, if we redraw, we could gain 1 seat. If the courts come and challenge it, we could lose 2 seats. So I think that is the risk. His point is, like, you know, what's the risk reward with most of these things? You might, you know, we might vote for Proposition 50, but the courts might come back and challenge the entire map. And you may not get 5 seats. I mean, this is a moving target.
What about that point and the idea that ultimately this could backfire against either party?
Right.
It could. I think it's one of the biggest, most significant issues facing this country as it relates to upcoming elections. Without a doubt, this could shift the map dramatically. You could have some massive gains on the House side. You could have some losses on the House side. It also has presidential implications as well. Are we counting illegal aliens in these census numbers? Are we not counting them? All of these things are kind of wrapped into an issue where if they were to pass some of these things, and as Ashley pointed out, once they pass them, courts are still going to get involved and these things are going to be challenged. So who knows how much of this gets settled before we start voting in the midterms as well.
What you're saying, Hogan, I think the other point is that it sets a precedence that we can, you know, you can go through a redistricting process, and at any point, if I decide I need leverage to win an election, I'm going to redraw the maps. I mean, that's the challenge.
That's what it's for anyway.
Well,
pretty much gerrymandering is so you can win elections.
No,
anyway.
absolutely, but I'm saying it sets a precedence that, you know, each of these states now that are getting in the battle are now open to mid-decade redistricting at the whim of, you know, trying to win.
One of the fascinating aspects of the Prop 50 battle, Hallie,
I know where you're going with this,
you
I
know
think.
exactly
I think we're
where
mind
I'm
melding.
going with this. Yes, it's not just about redistricting, which is huge.
Who is it about?
It is about the potential future of Governor
That's
Gavin
exactly
Newsom.
right.
Now, I interviewed him. I tried to get him to tell me his entire presidential platform.
You got there almost.
If he runs, wouldn't do it. He said he's focused on this fight right now. But talk about how the two are inextricably linked.
I love that you're raising this because I think this is such a key part to this redistricting fight. It is 100% about obviously the redistricting and about you know the maps and where that goes. It is also certainly about Governor Gavin Newsom being in many ways the face of the opposition of the Democratic Party to President Trump. And this is, you know, this was, I don't know if you want to call it a risky move. I'd be curious as to your thoughts there, but it's certainly a bold one, right? Texas does its thing. Newsom comes out and says, we're going to do it. To get this ballot measure on, runs this referendum. I mean, it's a big deal for him, and he has embraced that spotlight. It was fascinating to watch your discussion with him on Sunday on Meet the Press, Kristen, which was so good. But this dynamic that, like, I bet we'll see him while we're on the air tonight. You know what I mean? Talking about the, I don't know, I might take that bet, like talking about this and what he's doing on this front. Because, you know, Hogan, earlier in the program, you talked about AOC, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, potentially being a 2028 face. You got to put Governor Newsom right up there, as he has made his intentions pretty clear on that front as well. So this is very much, I think, about him and his futures too.
Ashley, what do you make of what Hallie's saying and Governor Newsom's message, which is we've got to fight fire with fire? He said, oh, Republicans thought we would get upset and write an op-ed, but we're actually fighting back, and Democrats are cheering him on.
Yeah, no,
including those who used to be opposed to redistricting, like former President Obama.
Absolutely, who weren't fans of Newsom either. I mean, the reality is I think he's setting a new playbook on how to oppose Donald Trump. He's doing a holistic approach to it. It's really three-pronged strategy. One, he's challenging him in the courts. He's challenging him in the legislature and with these redistricting maps. But in addition, he's turning the mirror on Donald Trump. He's modeling Donald Trump and all of his tactics and antics, and is having a fun with it, and is really energizing the base. I saw your interview, which was exceptional, by the way, and it was clear that he's really gaining his stride. I mean, he feels very comfortable, very in command. But can I just say one thing before we go tonight? This has been a big night for Democrats, and I know we are going to be pounding our chest. We're going to feel emboldened, as we should. But the reality is here, Democrats, the question is, I'm a strategist, what is the day after plan? What's the day after the shutdown? Win, lose, or draw, it doesn't matter. We need to advance a proactive agenda on the economy.
And don't go anywhere, because we're still...
They always say we're loud, but man, with this vote, you guys just scream from the rooftops.
Right now at 11 o'clock, two major tri-state races have been decided on this historic election night. We thank you for staying with NBC4. I'm Natalie Pasquarella.
And I'm David Ushry. Let's get right to the results. NBC News projects Democrat State Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani won the race for New York City mayor. And Democratic Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill will serve as New Jersey's next governor.
Sherrill besting Republican challenger Jack Ciattarelli by more than 10% of the vote. Meantime, in New York, Mamdani defeated former Governor Andrew Cuomo and Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa in an election that saw the highest voter turnout in more than 5 decades. The News 4 team spread out across more than 70 miles, bringing you comprehensive coverage of these and other key races. We start with News 4's Melissa Russo live with the Mamdani campaign in downtown Brooklyn. Melissa.
Natalie, Zohran Mamdani tonight making history in several ways. He is now the mayor-elect of New York City. He will be the first Muslim mayor of New York City, the first immigrant mayor of New York City, the youngest mayor in modern times at age 34. His birthday was last month. And he's also an unapologetic democratic socialist. Mamdani was a gifted messenger, and his message and his mission could now have major implications, not only for New Yorkers, but also for the midterm elections. Let's talk about what happened just a little bit ago while Andrew Cuomo stepped in at his headquarters. So Zohran Mamdani supporters, you can see them waving goodbye to former Governor Cuomo. I'm not going to say that this crowd booed Cuomo, but they were waving goodbye. Mamdani reaching 50%, holding on to 50% in those returns that are not yet complete, and the crowd here is excited about that. They are now cheering, and I'm imagining that's because they're anticipating that their candidate may be soon coming out onto the stage. But again, 50% in a three-way race, not insignificant. You mentioned the stunningly high voter turnout, the highest since 1969. More than 2.1 million voters turning out in this election. And contrary to the message that we heard a little while ago from Cuomo in his concession speech, and I'm going to let Andrew Sif cover that, Mamdani supporters, you can hear them chanting behind me. Cuomo said the city's going through a dangerous path, going down a dangerous path. They feel they are on a hopeful path. Not exactly clear how long until he steps out, but it feels like it's imminent.
Okay, Melissa, thank you. We will be keeping a close eye on that. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo addressing his supporters, as you mentioned just moments ago, conceding the race to Zohran Mamdani. News 4's Andrew Sif with the Cuomo campaign live at the election night headquarters in Midtown. Andrew.
Right, let's get right to it. Andrew Cuomo took the stage about 22 minutes ago here at the Ziegfeld Ballroom. He walked onto the stage. His supporters here were very curious what the tone would be, and Cuomo made very quickly clear that his tone was defiant.
And you attack one of us, you attack all of us. That is what it means to be a New Yorker. No one and nothing will ever divide us. And this campaign was necessary to make that point. A caution flag that we are heading down a dangerous, dangerous road. Well, we made that point, and they heard us, and we will hold them to it. Congratulations to Zohran Mamdani. That is not right. That is not right, and that is not us. That is not us. Tonight was their night, and as they start to transition to government, we will all help any way we can because we need our New York City government to work.
Any hotter, and we'd have to censor these sandwiches. Potbelly, we bring the hot.
City in the world, and we will unite for New York City because we love New York City. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank thank each and every one of you. I love you.
Former Governor Andrew Cuomo, as you could tell, defiant for most of his speech, defending the tone of his campaign, which ended in a loss to Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani. That's the latest reporting live at Cuomo campaign headquarters in Midtown. Andrew Siff, News 4 New York.
Okay, Andrew, thank you. About 90 minutes ago, Republican Curtis Sliwa conceded to Zohran Mamdani, defending his decision to stay in the race. Let's go to News 4's Ida Siegel, continuing our live team coverage at the Sliwa headquarters. Ida?
And David, a lot of people wanted Curtis Sliwa to drop out of the race. President Trump told Republicans to vote for a Democrat instead of Curtis Sliwa, but he stayed put, calling his campaign a movement. Curtis Sliwa came out to address his supporters not long ago. He said, "We have the right to vote and the right to freedom of speech." He said his campaign was for the common folk, but tonight Sliwa said he would hold Mayor Mamdani to account.
And let me warn our new leader, if you try to implement socialism, if you try to render our police weak and impotent, if you forsake the people's public safety, we're not only organizing, but we are mobilizing. And we will become the mayor-elect and his supporters' worst enemies.
Curtis Sliwa is to blame for the election of Zohran Mamdani.
You know, there's always an excuse when someone loses. My suggestion is look in the mirror.
And that right there was former Governor George Pataki, who says he's a good friend of Curtis Sliwa. Sliwa says he will continue to walk the streets of New York to keep them safe and to keep his movement going. Reporting live from the Upper West Side, Ida Siegel, News 4, New York.
Okay, Ida, thank you. We're going to take a moment now and head back to the headquarters of Zohran Mamdani. Melissa has a sense that he could come out and speak at any time, but Natalie, we heard about the enthusiasm in that room, and Melissa is there. And Melissa, you reported earlier, and we know we'll go to him if he comes out.
But David.
Melissa, can you hear us?
All right. Well, we'll see. It's taking a lot of things
can
happening.
now.
Oh, she can't.
I couldn't a moment.
Melissa,
I can't now. I didn't hear what you said though before.
While we're waiting for him, talk about. You said in the room earlier there was something psychological crossing the 50% mark. You explained that earlier in some of our coverage as we wait for him to come out.
Yeah, now I haven't seen the absolute final number, so
Right.
you'd have to tell me if I'm wrong. But at the last number that I saw, Mamdani was still holding on to 50%.
Support you as you have faced.
And he had been asked a number of times on this campaign trail whether it would mean that he didn't have a mandate if he did not cross that 50% mark. So, you know, that I think they're happy in this room that he is, at least for now, holding on to that 50% mark. At the moment, some of Mamdani's campaign team are just thanking some of their supporters. It's interesting. They just launched into a chant of DSA, which stands for the Democratic Socialists of America. They're thanking organized labor, the various municipal labor unions that came forward to support Mamdani, many of which had endorsed Andrew Cuomo in the primary. And it sounds like they are getting ready to just bring out some of his supporters. But no speech yet, no sign of Zohran himself yet.
Okay, Melissa Russo, we thank you. We're going to jump right back to that as soon as he hits the stage. But we do want to get back to New Jersey, where the governor's race is serving as an early indicator of President Trump's favorability in his second term.
Yeah, Democratic Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, the projected winner, defeating Republican former state representative Jack Ciattarelli, who lost before twice running for governor. Let's get out live to News 4's Pat Battle, who's with the Sherrill campaign in East Brunswick. Pat.
Yeah, David, and the party continues here at the Hilton in East Brunswick. The crowd has certainly thinned out, but people seem reluctant to leave. It was an astounding victory. Most of them concede that it was so close, everyone thought, and when she won that race by 13 points, this room just erupted. Her victory means that for the first time since 1961, the Democratic Party will serve a third consecutive term, consecutive being the operative word here, in the State House here in New Jersey. GOP, and she handily defeated Jack Ciattarelli. Again, double-digit leads. Those are numbers that surprised even some of her staunchest supporters. I caught up with Mikey Sherrill as she left that podium tonight to thank the people who helped her get to this victory. Here's what she had to say.
It's hard to describe. I feel great. I knew New Jersey would come out. This was amazing. This was a tough fight, and this is a tough state. But I know you, New Jersey, and I love you. I fought for you. I've spoken with thousands of you over this last year. I know your struggles. I know your hopes. I know your dreams. So serving you is worth any tough fight I have to take on, and I am incredibly honored to be your next governor.
Yeah, and David, you mentioned that both parties have been closely watching this year's gubernatorial race in New Jersey. It really is a barometer. People are going to get a pulse of where we stand in this country in terms of next year's midterm elections. And the folks in this room say this sends a clear message to Washington. It is a resounding rejection of the Trump administration policies, according to Mikey Sherrill and her supporters, who have tied her opponent closely to Trump policies and who voters clearly rejected, and that resonated with them. They have said here tonight that it's up to the Democratic Party now to carry this forward. They hope they have some momentum and empower them to do what they need to do to get the government back on track. We're reporting live from East Brunswick. We're going to turn it back over to you.
Many will be looking at the exit poll information that suggests some of what you're saying there, Pat. Okay, thank you. Republican Jack Ciattarelli has officially conceded the race to Mikey Sherrill about an hour ago. News 4's Adam Harding is at the Ciattarelli campaign headquarters in Bridgewater. Adam?
Yeah, the room has really thinned out pretty quickly. We heard from Jack Ciattarelli a little over an hour ago. As you mentioned, he has conceded this race, already called over to Mikey Sherrill to congratulate her on her win. And he addressed a crowd of supporters who were simply stunned by the result. Some of them did not want to believe it at first. Here is just a small taste of what he told his supporters as he thanked them for a very contentious, long several months in this election cycle.
I believe in my brand of leadership. I haven't stopped believing because of the outcome of tonight's election. It is my hope that Mikey Sherrill has heard us in terms of what we need to do to make New Jersey that place where everybody can once again feel they can achieve their American dream. Proud of my effort, going out there each and every day. 564 towns, 21 counties, North, Central, South, and Jersey Shore, and yes, all 600 plus diners. I hit 2 more today.
You know, Jack really positioned himself here in this race as the Jersey guy. You heard him a lot on this campaign trail talking about table issues. That's why he wanted to go to all of these diners and speak with voters, coming oh so close 4 years ago in the race for governor, coming up short once again. He told his supporters he would be agonizing in the days and hours ahead to really think about what they may have been able to do differently in this election, but he maintains he is proud of the race that he ran, disappointed, of course, in the results now for a third time coming up short in his bid for governor. But as he told his supporters, they have a message. They hope the Sherrill campaign has heard it. We'll send things back to you.
Adam Harding with the Ciattarelli headquarters. Thank you, Adam. In the only other gubernatorial election in the nation tonight, Virginia voters made history by electing the first female governor in the Commonwealth. Democrat Abigail Spanberger defeating the current lieutenant governor, Republican Winsome Earl Sears. In her victory speech tonight, the governor-elect promised to represent all Virginians, not just the people who voted for her.
And that's because I believe in this idea that there is so much more that unites us as Virginians and as Americans than divides us.
Spanberger will succeed Virginia's current governor, Republican Glenn Youngkin, in January. Virginia law does not allow a governor to serve consecutive terms. On Long Island, Nassau County legislator Seth Kozlow looking to unseat incumbent Bruce Blakeman in the race for Nassau County executive.
We have the results that have just started to come in. Let's take a look. Look like Blakeman is ahead right now with about 50% of the vote so far. Kozlow with 43%. Let's get out to News 4's Greg Sergel live with the Blakeman campaign in Baldwin. Everybody's waiting, Sergel.
Natalie and David, Bruce Blakeman is on the stage behind me, and we're told he's about to declare victory in this race in a county where vote counting is particularly slow. This night was no exception. We didn't begin to get any numbers in this race until 90 minutes after the polls closed, but those numbers, as you guys pointed out, very favorable to incumbent Republican Bruce Blakeman and Nassau Republicans in general. It appears that they've won victories in all the major races here in the county. Blakeman, as you said, comfortably ahead of his Democratic opponent, Seth Kozlow. The county executive stopped a little bit earlier tonight to talk to us, and I asked him about the Trump effect that seemed to hurt candidates in other locales, but he said here in Nassau County, the president is still viewed strongly. President Trump carried Nassau County just last November, and the county executive believed the Trump effect actually helped him in this race. Again, we're waiting to hear from the county executive. These Republicans from across the county are gathering on stage here, and the Republican chairman is also giving the thumbs up. Again, Bruce Blakeman expected to declare victory momentarily in his race for re-election, and now we'll begin to hear his name talked about as a possible gubernatorial candidate in New York next November. It's been hinted at in many circles. The county executive has been rather coy about his plans, but this victory could propel him to seek that nomination.
Okay, Greg, thank you. Thank you for that update. Thank you. There is more Decision 2025 coverage to come on News 4 New York.
We're going to take you live back to New Jersey in minutes with the reason that the mayor's race in the state's second largest city will not be decided tonight, and we're watching the Mamdani headquarters when we come back.
Being raised in the Bronx prepared me for life in a way that no other place could. Everything is earned here. Nothing is given. El Condado de la Salsa, the birthplace of hip-hop, the best Italian bakeries. And our pride runs deep. Like, what other borough has its own symbol? They say the toughest men in New York are women from the Bronx. And this Bronx woman gives it to you straight every morning.
Darlene Rodriguez, Bronx native. Watch the only all-local team on Today in New York.
You know the feeling when you realize you've bought things you'll never use? Sound familiar? Then try Vinted. These boots, they were supposed to go with everything. It's simple. Snap your item, upload on the app, and sell without fees. Download the Vinted app today.
Any free thoughts?
I think I need to do more with my money. Should I still be renting?
I live with my mom. How much should I save for my kids' tuition? What kids?
How early is early retirement? How much is in your 401k?
All my money's in checking.
What does the K stand for?
Ben, what's on your mind?
Could I be doing more with my money?
Let's look at where you're at and talk new goals.
Make sense of your money with Citizens. Meet this year's senior class, back together and most likely to get protected with mNEXSpike, a new and different COVID-19 vaccine from Moderna for adults 65 and older. These seniors chose mNEXSpike because it targets the virus differently to provide a robust immune response at a lower dose. mNEXSpike is a COVID-19 vaccine for people 65 and older. You shouldn't get mNEXSpike if you've had an allergic reaction to a previous Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. Rare cases of inflammation of the heart muscle and outer lining have been reported. The most common side effects are injection site pain, tiredness, headache, muscle and joint pain, chills, nausea or vomiting, swelling or soreness under the arm. These seniors are celebrating homecoming with a lower dose COVID-19 vaccine that helps them enjoy their time together. Like it's senior year all over again. mNEXSpike, the new COVID-19 vaccine by Moderna for the senior class. Ask your pharmacist or doctor about mNEXSpike.
So whenever I need more space in my wardrobe, I sell everything I don't wear anymore on the Vinted app. It's an app for secondhand fashion. Selling on Vinted is easy. You just take a picture of the item you want to sell and upload it. And since you set the price, you've got a better chance to earn back what you want from it. Download the Vinted app today.
I want to take you to Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani speaking right now at campaign headquarters.
The working people of New York have been told by the wealthy and the well-connected that power does not belong in their hands. Fingers bruised from lifting boxes on the warehouse floor, palms calloused from delivery bike handlebars, knuckles scarred with kitchen burns. These are not hands that have been allowed to hold power. And yet, over the last 12 months, you have dared to reach for something greater. Tonight, against all odds, we have grasped it. The future is in our hands. My friends, we have toppled a political dynasty. I wish Andrew Cuomo only the best in private life. But let tonight be the final time I utter his name as we turn the page on a politics that abandons the many and answers only to the few. New York, tonight you have delivered a mandate for change, a mandate for a new kind of politics, a mandate for a city we can afford, and a mandate for a government that delivers exactly that. On January 1st, I will be sworn in as the mayor of New York City. And that is because of you. So before I say anything else, I must say this. Thank you. Thank you to the next generation of New Yorkers who refused to accept that the promise of a better future was a relic of the past. You showed that when politics speaks to you without condescension, we can usher in a new era of leadership. We will fight for you because we are you. Or as we say on Steinway, ana minkum wa ilaykum. Thank you to those so often forgotten by the politics of our city who made this movement their own. I speak of Yemeni bodega owners and Mexican abuelas, Senegalese.
Performing on the biggest stage in the world was just one step in my journey. Hi, I'm Ron.
Trinidadian line cooks and Ethiopian aunties. Yes, aunties. To every New Yorker in Kensington and Midwood and Hunts Point, know this. This city is your city, and this democracy is yours too. This campaign is about people like Wesley, an $11.99 organizer I met outside of Elmhurst Hospital on Thursday night. A New Yorker who lives elsewhere, who commutes 2 hours each way from Pennsylvania because rent is too expensive in this city. It's about people like the woman I met on the BX 33 years ago, who said to me, I used to love New York, but now it's just where I live. And it's about people like Richard, the taxi driver I went on a 15-day hunger strike with outside of City Hall, who still has to drive his cab 7 days a week. My brother, we are in City Hall now. This victory is for all of them, and it's for all of you. The more than 100,000 volunteers who built this campaign into an unstoppable force. Because of you, we will make this city one that working people can love and live in again. With every door knocked, every petition signature earned, and every hard-earned conversation, you eroded the cynicism that has come to define our politics. Now, I know that I have asked for much from you over this last year. Time and again, you have answered my calls. But I have one final request. New York City, breathe this moment in. We have held our breath for longer than we know. We have held it in anticipation of defeat. Held it because the air has been knocked out of our lungs too many times to count. Held it because we cannot afford to exhale. Thanks to all of those who sacrificed so much, we are breathing in the air of a city that has been reborn. To my campaign team, who believed when no one else did, and who took an electoral project and turned it into so much more, I will never be able to express the depth of my gratitude. You can sleep now. To my parents, Mama and Baba, you have made me into the man I am today. I am so proud to be your son. And to my incredible wife, Rama, Hayati, there is no one I would rather have by my side in this moment and in every moment. To every New Yorker, whether you voted for me, for one of my opponents, or felt too disappointed by politics to vote at all, thank you for the opportunity to prove myself worthy of your trust. I will wake each morning with a singular purpose: to make this city better for you than it was the day before. There are many who thought this day would never come, who feared that we would be condemned only to a future of less, with every election consigning us simply to more of the same. And there are others who see politics today as too cruel for the flame of hope to still burn. New York, we have answered those fears. Tonight, we have spoken in a clear voice. Hope is alive. Hope is a decision that tens of thousands of New Yorkers made day after day, volunteer shift after volunteer shift, despite attack ad after attack ad. More than 1 million of us stood in our churches, in gymnasiums, in community centers, as we filled in the ledger of democracy. And while we cast our ballots alone, we chose hope together. Hope over tyranny. Hope over big money and small ideas. Hope over despair. We won because New Yorkers allowed themselves to hope that the impossible could be made possible. And we won because we insisted that no longer would politics be something that is done to us. Now it is something that we do. Standing before you, I think of the words of Jawaharlal Nehru. A moment comes but rarely in history when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends and when the soul of a nation long suppressed finds utterance. Tonight we have stepped out from the old into the new. So let us speak now with clarity and conviction that cannot be misunderstood about what this new age will deliver and for whom. This will be an age where New Yorkers expect from their leaders a bold vision of what we will achieve, rather than a list of excuses for what we are too timid to attempt. Central to that vision will be the most ambitious agenda to tackle the cost of living crisis that this city has seen since the days of Fiora LaGuardia. An agenda that will freeze the rents for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants. Make buses fast and free. And deliver universal child care across our city. Years from now, may our only regret be that this day took so long to come. This new age will be one of relentless improvement. We will hire thousands more teachers. We will cut waste from a bloated bureaucracy. We will work tirelessly to make lights shine again in the hallways of NYCHA developments where they have long flickered. Safety and justice will go hand in hand as we work with police officers to reduce crime and create a department of community safety that tackles the mental health crisis and homelessness crises head on. Excellence will become the expectation across government, not the exception. In this new age we make for ourselves, we will refuse to allow those who traffic in division and hate to pit us against one another. In this moment of political darkness, New York will be the light. Here, we believe in standing up for those we love. Whether you are an immigrant, a member of the trans community, one of the many black women that Donald Trump has fired from a federal job, a single mom still waiting for the cost of groceries to go down, or anyone else with their back against the wall, your struggle is ours too. And we will build a city hall that stands steadfast alongside Jewish New Yorkers and does not waver in the fight against the scourge of anti-Semitism. Where the more than 1 million Muslims know that they belong. Not just in the 5 boroughs of this city, but in the halls of power. No more will New York be a city where you can traffic in Islamophobia and win an election. This new age will be defined by a competence and a compassion that have too long been placed at odds with one another. We will prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about. For years, those in City Hall have only helped those who can help them. But on January 1st, we will usher in a city government that helps everyone. Now, I know that many have heard our message only through the prism of misinformation. Tens of millions of dollars have been spent to redefine reality.
The first words of the mayor-elect of the city of New York after he was declared the projected winner with more than 2 million New Yorkers voting.
Thanking supporters and saying hope is alive. We'll have complete coverage on Today in New York at 4:30 a.m. Have a great night.
C'est chaque jour moi dès qui ça pays a fait pour. Ou vie toute chance pour aller chercher la vie l'autre bord de l'eau. Mais est-ce qu'on connaît pays a, c'est ou même, c'est moi-même, c'est nous tout ensemble. Jodi a, li les proposer tout vraie question. Qui ça va faire pour petit tout avec l'autre génération qui vient yo? Chaque matin, sorti 8h pour arriver 10h, Radio Patriote FM 105.9 dans tête collée à Caribbean, Télévision, Network, CTN à porter pour vous, ça va quitter. Yon gros émission débat sur la vie pays d'Haïti, sous contribution nous chaque capoté pour construire Haïti nos rêves. Yon Haïti qui bon pour vous, pour lui, pour moi, pour nous toutes, quel que soit côté nié, en d'un pays ou soit l'autre bord de l'eau. Pas rater émission, ça va quitter. Chaque jour, sortez lundi pour arriver vendredi 8h10 dans matin sur Radio Patriote FM 105.9 à toute plateforme CTN, Facebook,
tous les jours, Caribbean Television Network vous présente CTN Info. CTN Info. Le journal qui éclaire votre quotidien avec une compréhension fidèle et objective des événements en Haïti, à Boston, à Miami et bien au-delà. CTN Info, c'est bien plus que des nouvelles, c'est un lien entre vous et votre communauté, où que vous soyez. Chaque soir, du lundi au vendredi de 8h à 9h, plongez au cœur de l'actualité avec des reportages exclusifs, des interviews captivantes et des analyses qui vous concernent vraiment. CTN Info vous apporte des perspectives authentiques façonnées par nos histoires, nos luttes et nos espoirs. Ne manquez pas ce rendez-vous quotidien qui fait résonner nos voix et nos expériences. CTN, notre histoire suivant notre propre compréhension.
Mesdames et messieurs, bienvenue à Sac Nouveau, votre émission quotidienne diffusée du lundi au vendredi de 21h à 22h, présentée par Caribbean Television Network en partenariat avec le cabinet Gédéon Morales, votre partenaire de confiance pour toutes vos démarches liées à l'immigration. Sac Nouveau est dédié à l'information et à l'accompagnement des immigrants haïtiens sur les questions migratoires aux États-Unis et à l'international. Notre objectif est de vous fournir des analyses claires, des conseils pratiques et des ressources essentielles pour faciliter votre intégration et protéger vos droits. Restez connectés à CTN pour des informations fiables et actualisées. N'hésitez pas à nous contacter pour toute question ou préoccupation concernant votre parcours migratoire. Ensemble, construisons un avenir meilleur.